The last conversation. The young man sitting on the equipment case looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. It was June 20th, 1970, backstage at the Atlanta International Pop Festival, and Jimi Hendrix was supposed to go on in 30 minutes. Instead, he sat hunched over his guitar in a corner of the performer's tent, his famous purple headband askew, his eyes focused on something far beyond the chaos of roadies and equipment that surrounded him. B.B. King had been watching him for 10 minutes, recognizing something familiar in the younger man's posture. The way Jimmy's shoulders curved inward, like he was trying to make himself smaller. The way his fingers moved absently across the guitar strings without making any sound. The way he seemed to be having a conversation with himself that wasn't going well. B.B. knew that look. He'd worn it himself plenty of times over the years, usually in the quiet moments before big shows when the weight of expectations felt heavier than the guitar in his hands. But there was something different about Jimmy's version of that familiar anxiety. Something deeper and more troubling. This wasn't just pre-show nerves. This was the look of someone who'd lost something important and couldn't figure out how to get it back. B.B. had been headlining festivals for 15 years, but this new generation of rock musicians fascinated him. They played louder, moved wilder, pushed boundaries he'd never thought to test. And Jimi Hendrix was the most fascinating of them all. A black guitarist who'd somehow become the biggest rock star in the world by doing things with an electric guitar that seemed to defy the laws of physics. But success, B.B. had learned, could be just as dangerous as failure, maybe more dangerous because it came with pressures that nobody prepared you for. He approached slowly, the way you'd approach a spooked animal. "Mind if I sit down?" B.B. asked, gesturing toward another equipment case. Jimmy looked up, and B.B. was struck by how young he looked despite everything he'd accomplished. 27 years old and already being called the greatest guitarist who ever lived. That was a lot of weight for anyone to carry, but especially for someone who'd grown up poor in Seattle and was still trying to figure out how to navigate a world that wanted to both worship and destroy him. "B.B. King," Jimmy said, and despite his obvious exhaustion, genuine respect colored his voice. "Man, I've been wanting to talk to you for years." "Well, here I am." B.B. settled onto the case, careful not to crowd the younger musician. "You doing all right? You look like you got something heavy on your mind." Jimmy laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. "Heavy, yeah, that's one way to put it." He played a quiet chord progression, something bluesy and melancholy that seemed to capture exactly what he was feeling. "You know what's funny?" Jimmy continued, his voice barely audible over the festival noise around them. 3 years ago, I was nobody, playing backup for Little Richard, getting fired from gigs, sleeping on couches. Now everybody calls me a genius, and I can't even remember why I picked up a guitar in the first place." B.B. nodded. He'd seen this before, the way success could disconnect you from the simple love of music that had started everything. "What did it feel like?" B.B. asked. "When you first started playing." "What did it feel like then?" Jimmy closed his eyes, his fingers finding a different melody. "Like flying. Like I could say things with the guitar that I could never say with words. Like the music was coming from somewhere bigger than me. And I was just translating it. And now? Now it feels like work. Like everybody's waiting for me to do something even more amazing than the last thing I did. Like the music belongs to them instead of me." B.B. understood. He'd felt that pressure himself, the way audience expectations could start to feel like chains instead of appreciation. "Can I tell you something?" B.B. said. "Something that might sound strange coming from somebody who's supposed to have all the answers." Jimmy opened his eyes and looked at him. "I've been playing guitar for 25 years, B.B. continued, and there are still nights when I go on stage and I don't know if I remember how to do it. Still nights when I wonder if I've got anything left to say that's worth hearing. Really? Really. And you know what I learned? That feeling, that uncertainty, that's not a problem to solve. That's the thing that keeps you honest. The day you stop wondering if you're good enough is the day you stop getting better." Jimmy played another chord, this one brighter, more hopeful. "But how do you handle it when everybody wants a piece of you?" Jimmy asked. "When you can't go anywhere without people expecting you to be this thing that they've built up in their minds? When you feel like you're disappointing people just by being human?" B.B. was quiet for a moment, thinking about his own journey from playing juke joints in Mississippi to headlining festivals like this one. "You remember why you started," he said finally. "Not why other people think you started, but why you really started. And you protect that reason like it's the most valuable thing you own, because it is." "I started because the guitar was the only thing that made sense," Jimmy said quietly. "Everything else in my life was chaos, but when I played guitar, everything lined up." "And does it still make sense?" Jimmy played a few notes, something that sounded like a question being asked and answered at the same time. "Sometimes. When I can get past all the noise and just play, but that's getting harder to find." B.B. leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you something, and I want you to think about it before you answer. When you're up there on stage, are you playing for them or for you? Jimmy was quiet for a long time, his fingers moving absently across the strings. I used to play for me, he said finally. Now I think I'm playing for who they think I am. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. And it's killing you. The words hung in the air between them. Not an accusation, but a recognition. BB had seen too many talented musicians destroy themselves trying to live up to images that had nothing to do with who they really were. So what do I do? Jimmy asked. BB thought about all the advice he'd received over the years, all the lessons learned the hard way, all the mistakes that had taught him more than the successes. You remember that the guitar doesn't care about any of that other stuff, BB said. Doesn't care if you're famous or unknown, rich or poor, loved or hated. The guitar only cares about one thing, whether you're telling the truth when you play it. The truth about what? About whatever's really going on inside you. Not what you think people want to hear, not what sells records or gets good reviews, just the truth about being Jimi Hendrix in this moment, dealing with whatever you're dealing with. Jimmy played a short melody that seemed to capture something essential about loneliness and hope existing in the same space. That's beautiful, BB said. What is it? I don't know. Something that just came out. That's what I'm talking about. That right there, that's the real thing. That's what nobody else can do. BB gestured toward the festival stage and where another band was finishing their set to enormous applause. All those people out there, they didn't come to see you do the same thing you did last year. They came to see what you have to say right now, today, with everything you've learned and lost and found since the last time they saw you. But what if what I have to say isn't what they want to hear? Then you say it anyway. Because the alternative, pretending to be someone you're not just to keep people happy, that's not music. That's just performance. Jimmy set his guitar aside and looked directly at BB for the first time since they'd started talking. How do you do it? He asked. How do you stay connected to the music after all these years? How do you keep it from becoming just another job? BB smiled. I remember that every time I pick up Lucille, I get to have a conversation with my best friend. And my best friend doesn't care about charts or reviews or whether the crowd likes me. My best friend just wants to talk. About what? About whatever's true. About being lonely on the road. About missing people I love. About being grateful for this crazy life. About being scared I'm not good enough. About all of it. The guitar knows how to take all those feelings and turn them into something beautiful. But only if you trust it enough, to be honest. Jimmy picked up his guitar again and played the same melody he'd played earlier, but this time with more conviction, more clarity. I think I used to know that, he said, before everything got so complicated. It's still there, BB assured him. The complication is just noise. Underneath all that noise, you're still the same person who picked up a guitar because it made everything make sense. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both lost in their own thoughts. Around them, the festival continued its controlled chaos. Roadies moving equipment, musicians warming up, the distant sound of the crowd waiting for the next act. Can I ask you something? Jimmy said eventually. Shoot. Do you ever wish you'd done things differently? Like, made different choices about your career or your music? BB considered the question seriously. I've made plenty of mistakes, said yes to things I should have said no to things I should have said yes to. But you know what I've never regretted? What? Every time I chose the music over everything else. Every time I trusted my instincts instead of listening to people who thought they knew better. Every time I played what felt true instead of what felt safe. Jimmy nodded slowly. I think I've been playing it safe lately. Even when it looks wild and crazy from the outside, I've been playing it safe on the inside. Playing what I know works instead of what I need to say. So what do you need to say? Jimmy played a few experimental chords, searching for something. I think I need to say that I'm tired, he said finally. Tired of being this thing people expect me to be. Tired of pretending that fame is the same thing as happiness. Tired of being lonely in crowds of people who think they know me. The melody that came out of his guitar was unlike anything BB had heard from him before. Quieter, more introspective, but somehow more powerful than all the feedback and distortion that usually characterized Jimmy's sound. That's it, BB said quietly. That's what they need to hear. You think? I know. Because that's what they're feeling too, even if they don't know it yet. All those people out there, they're dealing with their own version of being tired, being lonely, being expected to be something they're not. When you play your truth, you give them permission to acknowledge theirs. A stagehand appeared at the edge of their conversation. Jimmy, you're on in 5 minutes. Jimmy nodded and began gathering his equipment, but he moved with more purpose now, less of the defeated energy he'd been carrying when BB first approached. Thank you, Jimmy said as he stood up. I needed to hear that. I needed to remember. Remember what? That the music is bigger than all the other stuff. That it's okay to be human up there. BB stood as well, extending his hand. It's not okay, Jimmy. It's necessary. They shook hands, and BB could feel the young man's renewed strength in his grip. Will you watch from the side stage? Jimmy asked. I'd like to know you're there. Wouldn't miss it. What followed was one of Jimi Hendrix's most emotionally powerful performances. Instead of the explosive, feedback-driven show that people expected, he played with a vulnerability and honesty that caught everyone off guard. He talked to the audience between songs, sharing some of what he'd been feeling, acknowledging his own uncertainty and fatigue. The music was still technically brilliant, but it carried a different kind of energy. Instead of trying to overwhelm the audience with volume and spectacle, Jimmy seemed to be inviting them into a conversation about what it meant to be young and talented and struggling with the weight of other people's expectations. BB watched from the side of the stage, recognizing the transformation that was taking place. This wasn't the same musician who'd been sitting defeated on the equipment case an hour earlier. This was someone who'd remembered why he'd fallen in love with the guitar in the first place. After the show, Jimmy found BB backstage again. That felt different, Jimmy said, and BB could see the excitement in his eyes. That felt like myself again. How do you feel? Tired, but good tired, like I actually said something instead of just making noise. BB nodded. That's the difference between performing and playing. When you perform, you get tired. When you play, you get fed. I want to remember this feeling, Jimmy said. I want to carry this back to the studio, to my regular shows. I want to get back to making music that matters. Then do it. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. Don't let the business people or the critics or even the fans convince you to go back to being something you're not. Jimmy was quiet for a moment, then asked, Do you think it's too late? To change direction, I mean. To go back to making music for the right reasons? BB looked at this young man who had already accomplished more than most musicians achieve in a lifetime, but who was still searching for something authentic to hold on to. It's never too late to tell the truth, BB said. As long as you've got breath in your body and strings on your guitar, it's never too late to say what you really mean. They talked for another hour about music and life and the strange burden of being gifted in a world that didn't always know what to do with gifts. By the time they said goodbye, Jimmy seemed like a different person from the one BB had found sitting alone earlier that evening. Thank you, Jimmy said again as they prepared to go their separate ways, for reminding me who I am. Just remember, BB replied, nobody can take that away from you unless you let them. The music is yours. Don't give it to anybody else. They hugged, and BB watched as Jimmy walked away, already humming quietly to himself, his fingers moving in the air as if he were playing an invisible guitar. That was the last time BB King saw Jimi Hendrix alive. 3 months later, when the news came that Jimmy had died in London, BB thought about their conversation backstage in Atlanta. He wondered if Jimmy had been able to hold on to the clarity he'd found that night, or if the pressures of fame and expectation had eventually overwhelmed him again. But he also remembered the music Jimmy had played during those final months, more introspective, more emotionally honest than anything he'd recorded before. Music that suggested he'd been trying to find his way back to the truth, to the simple love of playing that had started everything. Years later, when people asked BB about his final conversation with Jimi Hendrix, he always said the same thing. He was trying to remember how to be himself again, and for one night at least he found it. The music he played that evening was the real Jimi Hendrix, not the image, not the legend, just a young man with a guitar trying to make sense of his world through sound. BB kept a photo from that Atlanta festival in his wallet for the rest of his life. Not one of the professional shots from the performance, but a candid picture someone had taken of him and Jimmy talking backstage. In it, both men are leaning forward, completely absorbed in conversation, their guitars resting against their knees. It was a reminder that the most important conversations about music happen not on stage or in interviews, but in quiet moments between musicians who understand the weight of carrying other people's dreams while trying to stay true to their own. The conversation ended, but the music continued. Every time BB played after that, he carried with him the memory of a young genius trying to find his way back to the simple truth that had made him pick up a guitar in the first place. And every time he spoke to young musicians struggling with their own success, he would pass along the lesson that Jimmy had helped him understand even more clearly, that the music is always bigger than the musician. And the only way to serve it properly is to remain honest about who you are, even when the world wants you to be someone else.